Okay guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So if you haven't already, make sure that you sign in and make sure that you go ahead and grab the calendar. I have an updated version of the calendar back here. So it was on Blackboard, but we've been having some issues with Blackboard lately. So make sure that you go ahead and grab one. And make sure that you sign in. So we're going to go through a couple of what I like to call housekeeping items before we get to the coursework. And we'll just kind of move along at whatever pace you guys feel comfortable with. Leah, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why it disappeared, so hopefully it won't disappear again. Leah is Skyping in, so I'm not just talking to my computer, just so you guys know. So a couple of things about the calendar. I've made some adjustments in a few things that you guys have here. Now, with your group, we had a little bit of an issue. So you guys didn't respond to not getting anything back, with the exception of Cheyenne. Cheyenne is the only one that emailed me and said, hey, where is my documentation? Where is my paper? Where is anything? Things aren't open. What's going on? And it was actually, I think, the time of the class or after the class or something that she had emailed me. So you guys really need to keep up with the communication. I try my best to communicate with you guys, but if it's a one-sided conversation, then it's really difficult. I was unable to get to your work. I found out that I'm on the verge of a stroke. I had some eye issues going on, and I just thought, like winking at everybody, it's just me winking. And it actually isn't. It's a little bit deeper and a little bit worse than that. So I'm not doing very well physically. And while I was trying to get everything done, my body just kind of said, hey, we're not having that. So I haven't been able to get to your papers the way that I want to. Also, when things are on campus, they're locked on campus for me. So I can't access it outside of the campus. So that kind of stinks for me. So I had worked on your papers here on campus, and then everything's locked here. So when I was in South Carolina, I couldn't do anything with them because I'd already done a lot of work, didn't want to redo all of that. So I'm going to go back to my office. I have a couple of meetings, and then I'm going to work on cranking out your essays. So I'll give you guys some extra time. I expect each of you to let me know how much extra time you need based on the feedback that I give you. So I'm expecting that each one of you will email me and say, okay, I understand the comments except for this one. Can you explain this to me? And I need until this amount of time. Okay? So I will get those taken care of today, and then you guys will have access to those. They'll be in your grade book as well. If you guys want, I can send you an email and let you know when I'm done with your paper specifically. Do you guys want me to do that?
Please.
Okay. All right. Any questions over that? Yes.
So you're talking about the first draft, correct?
I'm the final draft. You're going to have to fix the first draft for the final draft, but I'm sending you back the first draft.
Okay, so will the final draft of Essay 1 still be due today on March 3rd?
No, I'll give you guys until, at least until Thursday when class time is. If that's not enough time, then that's where you will individually have to say, I need more time than this.
Okay.
Now, if you need like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
that's going to be a bigger issue. So just, as long as it's reasonable, I'm okay with that. But know that you're getting your next essay on Thursday. So if you can get it done before Thursday's class, then it'll be off your plate. And you guys will see, once you get your first drafts back, you're going to see that I do a lot of changing directly on the document. So as long as this isn't completely finished, and a few of you had areas that weren't finished at all. So you'll have to add in that information. You'll have to bulk that up for sure. But as long as it's not a complete overhaul, then you should be able to get it done in a few days.
So after you grade our essay, what do you do, like, is it on Blackboard or?
Yeah, it'll be on Blackboard, and I'll just show you guys an example of a good example of a student's paper so you guys can see what it looks like. So you're going to have the color coding. Remember the color coding, what they are. If it's red, what does that mean? It means what? No, red is going to be one of those booerisms, so second person or contractions. You don't want to have those in there. The yellow is going to be grammar and punctuation, and the teal is going to be that there's some kind of citation error. So here she has torturous and painful experiences led Minkle to painful memories. Well, that doesn't actually come from the story, so she doesn't need the 1997, and she doesn't need Minkle's name in parentheses. She actually needs her name in the sentence. You're also going to see that you have different comments off to the side, and that comment is based in an area. So over here, she has some yellow areas. She has this section is highlighted, and there's a comment off to the side here.
How do we take the comments off?
You right-click on the comment and delete it. Good. And there will be a file that just has your name.docx.
What does the yellow mean again?
The yellow is grammar and punctuation.
Gotcha.
Most of the time it's punctuation. Not very often is it grammar. A lot of times when it's grammar, because that's a bit more complex and it's kind of coded, so I will make a comment off to the side if it's a grammar mistake. Okay. So today we're going to start talking a little bit about rhetorical analysis. So just try your best not to confuse the two ideas in the two papers. This paper is difficult. It's really difficult. And hopefully you guys will be able to understand the idea of creating a rhetorical analysis. You won't actually get the assignment until Thursday. So I'm going to wait until Thursday to give you the assignment and the assignment options, because I want you guys to really focus on the process of creating a rhetorical analysis instead of what your assignment is going to be. Okay. So again, we're going to focus on that on Thursday, but today we're going to focus on practicing for this. So with the practice, we're going to go over the concepts and go over the ideas, and we're going to focus in a section at a time. So we're going to focus first on analysis, and then we're going to focus on the idea of rhetoric, and then we're going to focus on what a rhetorical analysis actually is. And then I have a couple of quick practice items for us, but we may or may not be able to get to those. The first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is actually extra credit. So with the extra credit, the way the extra credit will work, it starts today for this next assignment. So with the extra credit, there are a bunch of opportunities, but I really want you to focus on something that gives you an opportunity to see a presentation. So by seeing a presentation, what I mean here is that you're seeing something being presented. An example of that, we lost her again. An example of that would be the movie that is playing tonight. So at 6 p.m. Mockingjay is supposed to be playing. I don't know if they'll cancel it because of the weather. But it's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's a pretty good movie. You can attend that event. You can kind of focus on the layout, focus on what's going on. And I'll explain more of this with the rhetorical analysis. They are also having an event where you can have coffee with the president. It's not Obama. The president that they're talking about is the campus president, Michelle Simmons. So she is going to have an event where she just sits and has coffee with you guys and answers any questions. So if you want to attend one of those events, if you think of something else that comes up, there is an improv group coming on April 1st, but that would only give you like a day to get it completed, because remember that your extra credit is going to be due the same date as your paper. And if you look at your calendar, your paper is going to be due April 2nd. A couple of quick notes here. We are going to start talking on Thursday about research. That's heavy information. It's heavy and it's difficult information. Colleges have a lot of different databases that you will use, and I'm going to show you guys the most effective databases to use, and I'm going to focus on some of your content areas too. So some of you are really focused in moving on to a 4-year. So there are certain databases that you will use more than others at the 4-year, so you can start practicing with those here and now. If you're in a criminal justice program, there is a database that is really heavily used for criminal justice. If you're in nursing or a medical field, there's one database that a lot of nursing people use. So every database is a little bit different. We're going to talk about the databases. We're going to actually get in there and practice with getting into the databases. And I'm going to show you guys a few parameters that you can put on things and a few extensions that you can put on things in order to get good results. This is always an area that's difficult. So we'll talk about that on Thursday. Thursday will also be when you guys get your assignment, so your next essay. You will be doing components. So I do have a couple of times that you guys are doing pieces that will build up to the whole. So the first thing that you're going to focus on is going to be the research. So you're going to focus on researching for the topic. You're going to have to review the videos, and you're going to be analyzing videos. So you guys are going to research the videos, you're going to watch the video, research the information that you don't know about. And we'll talk more about that on Thursday. So really over spring break, I'll say this as delicately as possible, we all need a break. So I've given you guys assignments that hopefully you can do on your own, and you don't have to contact me very often. I am going to be planning my wedding. That's like 70 days away, so thank you. So I still have a lot to do for that, and I really need to take a break. I've got a neurologist appointment, and hopefully won't have to have too much to take care of this. So it's going to be really important that you guys do the work out as much as you can. You're coming up with a few pieces of research, so it shouldn't be too difficult, and you could actually finish it. You won't probably be able to finish it in class, but you should be able to finish it that week. I know some of you have classes on Monday. If you want to come in on Monday and do it, if you want to come in on Tuesday before this class, if you have time or if you have blocks of time in there, then you could really do it during that time. I think you guys are quick enough that you catch on to the concepts really quickly and easily, and research is just getting in there and kind of digging around in it. So on the 17th is going to be a really important day for you guys to be here. You see that your first group meetings will be that day. So I'm going to put you guys in groups, and while you're in those groups, and I will select those, while you're in those groups, you're going to be talking about certain information. So that day, you're going to meet your group members, you're going to have initial group discussion, and then you're going to do what we call an audience analysis. So you have 2 assignments due that day, and that's going to be 40 points. So it's important to be here that day. The 19th, we're going to talk a little bit about essay development, and we're going to focus specifically on looking at the thesis and outline. The 24th, we're going to do some documentation work. This essay will actually be in MLA format, so it's different from the one that you did before. Also, with Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel's piece, I gave you the citation. I'm going to show you guys how to put those citations together. Usually the most difficult part of putting a citation together is not knowing what to put, but knowing where to find what you put in that area. So an example of this is you need the page number, but oftentimes we don't know where to find the page number. So I'm going to show you guys that. Yes.
I believe there is a program in Microsoft Word.
And it's wrong. And if
wrong.
you use it, and this is the thing, if you use it, it will lock it, so I can't edit it.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to show you guys the long path, and the long path is really not that long. It's really easy, and because you guys are again, you guys are really good at picking up on things fairly quickly and manipulating windows, so you guys understand how to multitask basically. So I'm going to show you guys the quickest and easiest way to do that efficiently. There's also a little cheat called Noodle Tools, and that's one of many. It's wrong. And it's very wrong. A few years ago over the summer I had a week-long conference, so I was gone and I had a sub come in, and I will never have him sub for my classes ever again. I'm going to cut that out of the video. So he came in and subbed for my classes. He showed them all the shortcut, so as I was grading their papers I was like, what? What is that? Why is that there? And marking him off, marking him off, marking him off, and then when I saw the pattern I realized that he had showed them the cheat, and the cheat is wrong. So the word reference piece is not necessarily a cheat, but it's incorrect. So, and it will lock me out of fixing anything. So just be very careful with that. So as you guys see, there are a couple more notes I want to make on this. We're going to set up your reference page on the 24th, so you're going to be doing that in class, and that will be the last page of your essay. Your first essay will be due, or your first draft will be due March 26th. That day you will come in and you will do group peer reviews. I will explain that when we get to that part of the process, but know that I will be available to answer questions, but I'm going to be working on grading your papers during that time. On the 31st, you and I will have one-on-one meetings. So you and I will meet one-on-one, and we will talk about your papers. I may adjust this depending on what I'm seeing at that time. So I'm already foreseeing that I may have to adjust the due date and have you guys meet with your groups one more time for the group peer review, and then have you refine it before you turn the first draft in to me. So April 2nd, the final draft will be due, and then we're going to take a day off, and we're going to do another exercise, another activity. Any questions over the calendar? Any questions over extra credit? Okay, the information that we go over today, it will go more quickly if you guys are responding. And everything that we're going to talk about, we're really going to try to frame it around Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel's piece. So again, if you want to take some notes, this would be a good time to take notes. I don't care if after I get this written, you guys take pictures of it. If you want to take pictures of it, do that. Whatever is going to give you access to it, that's what you need to make sure that you're doing. The information that I add in is not necessarily going to be on the video, because the video is only focused here, and I'm going to be writing stuff on other sides as well. So again, if you want to take pictures, then that's fine. So let's talk a little bit about the purpose of Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel's I Saw Anne Frank Die. So what was the purpose of her piece? Why did she write her piece?
It was kind of like persuasive, like you should tell your story.
Okay, so she was trying to persuade others to share their stories. And how do we know that?
She said it right at the very end of her piece.
Okay, at the end, in the last paragraph, she says, share your stories, it helps. Okay, good. Did she say it anywhere else?
I don't think so. Yeah, she does.
She does.
Where?
So do you guys remember where she tells older people to share their stories? Where does she say that?
Is it
In the very beginning, she says older people must share their stories. So why do you think she shifts from older people must share their stories to people should share their stories?
She's starting with a specific group of people and then just kind of moving into everyone, either that or everyone at some point in their life does become old.
Okay, everyone
Everyone.
Everyone becomes old.
Oh, people that make it that far.
Okay, so during the story, we actually see a couple of people who don't make it to that age. Who do we see who doesn't make it to that age?
Anne Frank.
She talks about Anne Frank, and that's closer towards the end. So she talks about a 15-year-old who had a really great story, but that story was held inside and hidden for many years. Who else dies in the story, whose story she shares a little bit of? The Commandant. She shares a little bit of his story, and then she tells us about his death. So eventually he commits suicide, and we can assume that's because of maybe the guilt of what had happened. So she is trying to persuade others to share their stories. She just comes out and she says, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. She's pretty overt about it. Now, does she give us information? Does she inform us of facts and statistics and details? She does. But her primary purpose is not to inform us of her story. Her primary purpose, again, is to persuade others to share theirs. Does she make us feel emotions? Does she entertain us with emotions? Yes. So she is doing the other pieces of persuasion. So when we talk about persuasion, we talk about purpose, we talk about the purpose pie. Remember, persuade, inform, or entertain. So she's doing all of these things. But whenever you have persuasion, it is usually the one that stands out above everything else. So somebody can be giving you information, but if they are also trying to persuade you, that usually stands above the rest. Okay, now we're going to focus on analysis. So we're focusing on something that isn't necessarily written. Before we do that, what do you use if the purpose isn't in your face? If the author doesn't say, this is what I'm going to do. How do you figure out why the author is writing the piece? How would you figure that out?
Thinking critical.
Okay, and using what? When you think critically, what do you use? Okay, you may use some of your previous knowledge.
Information presented.
The information that's presented, you're going to use the topic sentences. You're going to use the details. You're going to use the language. You're going to use all of that for you to decide what is this person's purpose. Why are they writing? And purpose is all about the why. Why are they doing this? The pieces that you will have the option of, they all are persuasive pieces, but none of them come out and say, this is what I'm trying to do. So they're all hidden. So you're going to have to figure out what is their purpose. And all of them are persuasive pieces. So now we're going to focus on the idea of analysis. So the idea of analysis is that you're moving beyond description. You're not just giving us information from the story, that you're going into more detail and describing or putting qualities and characteristics on certain things, like the author. So what is a quality or characteristic that we can put on Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel? What can we say about Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel?
She's a leader.
Okay, now that is going to be a detail because it's in the story. So she's the barracks leader. So what does that tell us about her? Let me add another detail from the story, and then you guys can kind of think of an analysis of that information. So she watches people die every day. She goes without food.
She's a survivor.
Okay. So maybe you say that she is a strong survivor. Usually when we're dealing with analysis, we want to deal with more adjectives, descriptive words like strong or strength, like she has obvious strengths. But you want to deal with those words. You want to put some words, qualities, and characteristics. So these are the details from the story. And this is the analysis. So what's one other quality and characteristic that you can put on Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel? What else can you say about her that's not in the story? Okay, let me go somewhere with you. What if I said she was cruel? Is there any evidence that supports that? Cruel or mean? What might support that she's cruel or mean?
Personally, don't know of anything.
Okay. Do you have the story?
So,
Does she do anything that could be perceived as mean?
Cruel, the stealing or slaughter of the livestock that they stole after being released.
Okay, so she steals the pig. So again, if we're looking at things, it's not again for you guys, but if we're looking at things as black and white, then she stole something. So she's a bad person, right? Now there are deeper reasons for that, but if we're just looking at it, she stole a pig. What else does she do? Specifically as barracks leader, what does she do? She, with the commandant, with the soldiers, not with the commandant, but with the soldiers and with the young children like Anne Frank. So she lies to the soldiers. She lies to the children. She lied to Anne Frank and said, no, you're not so sick. So she lies. She lies and she steals. And what else?
Just like the clothes of people that died.
Okay. Steals the clothes from the dead bodies. Okay. What'd she do with the food?
Gave it to the
She gave it to the younger kids. So she rations the food. And she focused on the young. But what did she do with people who were dying? Did she give them a lot of food?
No.
No. So she starves those who are dying. Now these are very different ideas, but based on the evidence, are they both accurate? They are. Do you lean one way more than the other? Do you think this more than you think this, or do you think this more than you think this?
I mean, you think strong survivor more over cruel and mean.
Okay. So most people are going to think of her in a more positive light, but some people are going to think of her as a mean person. I had a student yesterday, Monday, Wednesday class. He was like, that crazy old lady, she's lying, she's doing this, she's doing that. And he came up with these reasons. He's not wrong. It's just a different viewpoint. So if you're here, okay. If you're here, okay. The point is that you need to come up with an overall quality or characteristic, and then you need to support that with the evidence. So let's go down to the audience, and let's do some analysis of the audience. And we did this before, so hopefully you guys will remember this information. So what qualities and characteristics can we put on the audience? What can we say about the audience? Remember, the audience are Newsweek readers in 1997. So what kind of person, and be nice because I was a Newsweek reader in 1997. So what kind of person read Newsweek in 1997? What did we say about them?
The intellect.
Okay, they're educated. And what would indicate that they're educated?
that they would know about the Holocaust or something.
Good. They already know about the Holocaust and Anne Frank, so she does not have to provide background information. She doesn't provide that because she knows her readers are already going to know. Good. What else? What else proves that they're educated?
They can read.
Okay, they are literate. And I want you guys to think about this. So in 1997, back when I was growing up, actually I graduated high school a couple years before that, and I read Newsweek but it cost, back in 1997, it cost $2.59 for an edition of Newsweek. So back when gas was around $1, you had 2.5 tanks of gas for one magazine. So that tells you a little something there. Newsweek, in 1997, we didn't have publications online. If you had access to the internet in 1997, you were probably creating it in some way, because things were not published online. We didn't have access. The common people did not have access. Even the more affluent people didn't have access to the internet at this time. So you actually had to physically go to a newsstand or go to a place and buy Newsweek. It was a physical copy of a magazine. So you had to be literate. You couldn't just press on something and listen to the story. So you had to be literate. What else? So let me give you a couple of others. It's a national magazine in English. So what analysis can you use for this with this information?
Well, somebody who lives in the United States,
Okay.
who speaks English.
Okay. And back in 1997, we would call that person an American. Most of us would still call that person an American, but it's an American. So we use the evidence to come up with an assumption. Now, how many of you already knew? I will also add in here that they knew to buy Newsweek. How many of you already knew all of these things? Okay. How many of you knew that it was a national magazine? It's published in English. Okay. So these are areas that you would need to supply some information for yourselves. And how do we find out information? Through the research. So these would be areas that you would need to research more, because you have gaps in your understanding. Good. All right, any questions over this so far before we move on? All right. As we go through this information, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. And I want you guys to think about Irma Sonnenberg-Minkel's piece, but I also want you to start thinking about this in terms of just what you do on a daily basis. So analysis is going to move beyond description. So analysis is not just describing the characteristics or the qualities. It's not just giving us the details from the story. It's looking at what is meaningful to the readers, and it's looking at why that might be meaningful to the readers. You're also looking at very specific details. So in order to do this, you have to look very carefully at the specifics. So an example of this, my son, I have one son who's kind of mean. So he said the other day, he said, "Mom, you look tired. You want to go eat?" He has money all the time, so "You want to go eat? You look tired." And I went, "Man, you're a mean kid." Why do you think I thought he's a mean kid?
Because taking into the thought that you look tired
Okay.
doesn't particularly mean that you just look tired.
Okay. What word is the word that made me go, ooh? Look. Now, if he had said, "Mom, I'm sure you're tired. You've worked hard today," I would have been like, "Yeah, I did. Let's go eat." But he said, "You look tired." So for me, as the audience, I'm going, that means I look ugly. That means I look horrible. That means I have bags under my eyes. And I probably did. But that doesn't matter, because he used that one specific word. My reaction was, ooh. So because of those little specific details, you want to do what we call a close reading. Now, in order to do a close reading, you're going to have to really dive into the word choice that is used. You're going to have to really focus on those little details. Instead of the broad ideas, focus in on those small details. So the way that I like to do this is to actually have the text in the center, and then over on the right-hand side, I like to make my own notes. So I like to really react to things on the right-hand side. I will connect that to specific words, or I may connect that to specific ideas. I will circle the ideas here and then draw an arrow over here and make my note. Now, oftentimes we come across things that we maybe are confused by. We come across gaps in our learning and understanding. So I would make those gaps, those areas that I need to learn a little bit more about, those questions, I would push those off to the left-hand side. Why do you think I want to keep those two things separate? Why do you think that would be important to keep those two ideas separated?
To not get them mixed up.
Okay.
They're two different things for two different reasons, and you don't want to mix them.
Okay. What am I going to do with the questions?
You're going to answer the question.
I need to answer them, so I need to research them. So I need to add in that research component. My feelings are not necessarily going to change, and if they do, I want to record it as they're changing. But I need to research certain things, so I want to keep those two things separate. So here are a couple of examples of other methods of annotation and how people annotate their own pieces. So this student has a text, and in the margins, he has made some notes. He has underlined some things. He uses squiggly lines. He circles things. He has blue, green, and red, so he probably has one of those pens where you slide it down. It's a different color. So he's made some notes off to the side. He's got things circled. Notice that he has words or phrases that are circled or underlined. So we've got a word here, we've got a phrase, we've got a word, and we have some connection over here. Got a couple of words here. Another method would be highlighting. This is really dark, and I apologize. But highlighting is another method that you can use. I want you guys to be very wary of using highlighters. Why do you think I want you to be cautious with highlighters? What's that? They bleed through. Most of the time we're working with recycled materials. So your common book is a recycled material piece. So most of the time they're going to start bleeding through, and then you have it duplicated. Good. The other part of this that is confusing, you see that she has two different blues. So her light blue is questions raised, and her darker blue is repetition. She has foreshadowing, words to define, and adverbs listed there. She has made some notes into the margin. She has a lot of information in here. She has two different tones of the same color. So she's going to have to constantly refer back to her key over and over again as she's reading through the document. This continues on to the next page. So what do you think she's going to have to do with that key?
Put it on the next page.
She's going to have to put it on the next page, and the next page, and the next page, and so on and so forth. So you want to be really careful with highlighting unless you're looking at something with very specific purposes. This is another method. So this student has the text in the center, and off to either side this person has chosen to write some things, and he has categorized those things. So if he has a question or something that he's unsure of, he writes that in blue. If he has something, this green is kind of his response to the blue, and then the red is maybe his clarification. So he uses this format. It's just another format. Again, notice that he is really focusing on words that are used as well as whole ideas. Now, another thing that you guys can do if you have an electronic version and you want to use the electronic version, then you can just start highlighting on your own. Many of the newer computers have some kind of touch screen where you can highlight things, and then you can do screen captures of some sort, or you can record it in that way. If you feel comfortable enough with technology to do that and you want to use that method, have at it. Use it. Use whatever method you're going to feel most comfortable with. The point of this is to make sure that you're doing a very close reading and you're looking at specific word choice. The other part of this that I want you guys to walk away with is making sure that you're doing analysis and you're not just describing. So you're not just saying that Minkle was 100 years old, but maybe you're saying that Minkle was wise, and part of that is evidence through her age. Questions over analysis. Because that's the easy stuff. So let's talk a little bit about rhetoric then. So rhetoric has many, many different definitions. I know that this is an idea that many people struggle with. I myself struggled with it for a little bit, and then I caught on to it, and I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. So the idea of rhetoric, you have some hyperlinks here that will take you to some definitions as well. The idea of rhetoric, the first definition here is from the freedictionary.com. Rhetoric is the art or study of using language effectively and persuasively. So I really like the beginning of this. So it's the art or study of using language effectively, but then the dictionary continues to say, and persuasively. Now, persuasion is primarily the framework where we talk about rhetoric, but it's not always persuasion. Persuasion is you need to come to my side. And that's why I like the second definition a little bit better in that aspect. So they define it as communication used to modify the perspective of others. So it's not just a study of using language effectively, but maybe using communication effectively. To modify the perspective of others. So this idea of rhetoric is how do authors, how do creators connect to their audience? So there's a conversation between the author and the audience, and in that exchange, there is context. So again, I want you to think of rhetoric as the author and the audience, the communicator and the communicatees, having a conversation between each other. So in that, we have to consider elements. And this is where Aristotle kind of came up with this idea. He said this is really looking at the ability to see or identify means of persuasion. So it's getting you to understand my point and me being able to modify your perspective. So even if you don't agree with me, you at least understand my point. So again, all of these are hyperlinked so you can access those. So rhetoric is really how information is presented rather than what is presented. So this is context. This is not content. So let's put that into perspective. So if this room were really, really, really cold today, and you hadn't eaten all day, and you were tired, and you saw outside that the snow was just starting to come down, your context is going to help you not understand what I'm saying. You're not going to be able to focus on what I'm saying because you're going to be cold. Your body's going to be reacting. Your situation around you is going to really put you in a bad mood probably, and you're going to be ready to go. So the context is all that other stuff that has to apply to the situation. So when we're talking about the situation, we're identifying what the purpose is, and then we're looking at how does the author communicate that purpose to the audience. And in looking at those things, that direct pathway, we have to look at the context. So some of the things that you have to consider with the context, you have to look at the main idea. So this is slightly different from the purpose. The purpose is the why. The main idea is what is being said. What is that main idea being said? The medium is also going to be a consideration. So how are you getting that information? And the genre is going to be more specifically the type. So if we're talking about medium, music can be a medium. But if we're talking about genre, we can talk about country, we can talk about rock, we can talk about metal, we can talk about rap, we can talk about hip hop. And then there are subcategories even within that we can talk about as well. With the medium, I will tell you guys this, and you should write this down. The medium for all of your pieces is going to be a video. So every one of your pieces is a video. The genre is going to be different, though, for everybody. So the genre is going to be more specific. The other component that we always have to be aware of is the culture. So the culture can be the cultural aspects of the audience, of the author, or of the content itself. We have to constantly be aware of the culture because of many reasons. But we have to really understand what culture is. So culture can include age. When we're talking about the culture, we can talk about age as well. So in my class right before you guys, I have 2 students who are still in high school, and I have a man in the class who's like 64. So when I'm tailoring those conversations, it's really difficult to get such a large age range and to include information that the older student is going to understand as well as the younger students are going to understand. So age plays a significant role. I used to have Work 1 come in to my classes when I was in Logansport, and one day she came into my classes, and she had been in my classes for several semesters, and most of my students are returning adults. So she was in this class, and she was talking about, the young kids, they go to this one program, but we'll talk about the older kids and the older students, da-da-da-da. Everybody in that class was in that young kids category, and she had just dismissed them. So how do you think they felt? Left out and very offended because she was very dismissive of them. So she didn't even take into consideration her audience. So age is definitely a consideration. What do you think another consideration, a cultural consideration, needs to be? In addition to age, what else?
Cultural views.
Okay, what kind of cultural views?
Such as
Religion. So if we think about why it was such a big deal for Minkle to eat that pork, why was that such a big deal?
As we discussed earlier, those of Muslim faith do not eat pork.
Jewish as well.
Jewish.
So she's Jewish, so she has probably never eaten pork in her entire life. And here she is, probably in her 40s, eating pork for the first time. So not only was it, she hasn't eaten in a very long time, and she's hungry, so she probably gorged a little bit, but this is an animal that is known by her faith as being disgusting. So she's eating this disgusting animal. It had to have some psychological play in there as well. So religious components have to be taken into consideration. Good. So age, religion, what else? Again, this will go much more quickly if you guys all participate here.
Tradition?
Okay, and where do traditions typically come from?
I mean, it comes from culture, wherever you're from.
Okay, ethnicity. So ethnicity and race are actually slightly different. Ethnicity is the group that you identify with, whereas race is going to be the physical identification. So even though your family, your skin color may be one color, you may identify more with another area or with a subgroup. So the idea here is that your ethnicity plays a big part into that. Also, your race plays a big part into that. So we want to make sure that we're covering all of our bases whenever we go into a conversation as the author and not offending our audience. I worked in Logansport where I had a really high Hispanic population. So I always had to be aware of linguistic barriers, but I also had to be aware of cultural differences. So you have to be aware of those things as the author, and the audience is going to react to those things. Political beliefs, those always make a big impact. So we have to be really cautious and aware of political beliefs. That would be a cultural element as well. And gender. Gender is also a huge component. I was sharing with my earlier group. I used to have a class, and there were women in the class, and then there was one guy. And you guys can feel a little bit of this. So there was one guy, and he missed one day. So we were planning out a paper, and we were talking about women, and we were talking about PMS, we were talking about girl parts, we were talking about menstrual cycles. Like, we were talking about all this girl stuff, and I've got it written all over the board. And the male comes in. He's like, what the heck did I just walk into? So he is put off by that, but because my audience at the time was one group, but we added in another audience member, and that changed and shifted the entire culture. So this is something as authors you're going to be aware of, and you're going to be paying very close attention to when you do your argument paper. Right now, you are going to observe all of these areas. So in looking at the rhetorical situation, we look at these ideas to determine what appeals have been used. So when we're talking about the rhetorical appeals, we're talking about something that's slightly different, but it's still based on those situations. So the situation is kind of everything that's going on, and the appeals are the strategies that are used. Now you guys will see here you have hyperlinks. These 3 hyperlinks to ethos, logos, and pathos will take you to a website that has 3 different sheets that go over information. Down here you have some videos. The first video is the one that most of you will probably enjoy the most.
Persuasion is an art. Great speakers throughout time have been able to change their listeners' minds and even move their audiences into action through the art of persuasion.
This one is more contemporary. She actually talks about Obama in this, as well as several other figures who are more popular. The APP here, this is my personal favorite because it takes me back to the 80s. We used to watch this series, this Change My Mind series, so it's super cheesy. It's awesome. It is. It's great. Like, we grew up on this, and we waited for this. And she uses, like, cartoons and fun stuff.
Just like a book I grew up on building nerds.
Yeah? Her outfit's very similar to his. So this is another video if you want to watch this. This last video is the one, we don't have time to watch it in here. This is the one I like the best.
You're watching Persuasive Appeals, Ethos, Logos, and Pathos by Bruce Goodner.
You'll understand why.
This is Ari. Ari has an idea. He'd like to order pizza for dinner tonight, but there could be a problem. This is Ari's mom. She may or may not order the pizza. She's got the phone and the money.
Okay, so it goes through how Ari is going to use persuasion to persuade his mother to order the pizza. And they talk specifically about the use of ethos, logos, and pathos. So ethos is an appeal to the credibility. So when we think of someone as having credibility, what do we think of them having?
Job.
Okay. And in order to get that job,
Education.
they need to have an education. So oftentimes we will trust in somebody who has an education in the field specifically. It's not always education that makes an employer hire an employee. What else? Experience. Good. So education and experience are usually the two areas that we really start to trust in people. So I would trust somebody to watch my kids who had experiences with kids more than I would trust somebody who had a degree in child rearing. I would trust somebody who just came fresh out of college to maybe work on a medical procedure, because in college they're learning about the newest techniques, they're learning about the newest ideas, and then they can start to gain their experience. Many students said earlier that they would trust a doctor who had experience over a doctor who has an education. I would trust somebody who has education probably over the experience. It just depends on what part they're working on, I guess. So there are times that education trumps experience, times that experience trumps education, but for the most part, in order to build credibility, you need to have both. Now, as the authors, what happens if you don't have the credibility? What do you have to do?
You have to provide, your reasoning, your logic.
Okay. And if you haven't done the research, or if you haven't done the research in the field, you have to provide experts who have done that. So to build this credibility, we use experts, and the experts have the education and the experience, and we have to sometimes provide support that shows those experts. So Irma Sonnenberg-Minkel used Anne Frank's name in the title. Why do you think she did that? People know Anne Frank's name more than they know Irma Sonnenberg-Minkel's name. So they are going to know her, and Anne Frank has a high amount of credibility because of her shared experience. Good. The next one is the idea of logos. Logos is logic. Sometimes this is referred to as reason or justice. This is the one that we have to be really cautious with. This is one of them that we have to be really cautious with. What is considered just or right in the U.S. is going to vary state to state. It's also going to vary in the U.S. based on other countries. So other countries have laws that we don't. We have laws that other countries don't. So what may be fair and just in one country is not necessarily fair and just in our country. How many of you know about Les Mis? Okay. The idea of Les Mis is a man steals bread. So he stole, so he should go to jail. He actually goes to prison for a really long time for stealing the bread. Now you may think, it's bread. It's bread, and he stole it. So he goes to jail. But later on, you find out that he actually stole it for his family, to feed his family. So that's kind of a gray area where most of us would go, well, he stole it for his family, and it's just bread, so it's not a big deal. But this idea of logos, the law is the law, and there's no gray. So you have to be really careful when you're dealing with logic, because, again, it's going to vary from country to country, even from state to state. And if you're presenting an idea as logical, it cannot have gray areas. So it has to be straightforward. The other part of this is what we call pathos. And pathos is going to be the emotion. So what's the problem with using emotion in a piece? What's the problem with using emotion in a piece? Do we all feel the same way? Absolutely not. So what you may think of as emotional, I may think of as, whatever. I may not feel the same. So emotion is very touchy because it can change person to person. So you may think that you want to use all of these separately, but we're actually using the best pieces are going to use all three of these combined. So in Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel's piece, which one did she rely on? Which one or two did she rely on most heavily? Ethos, logos, or pathos? She uses a lot of pathos in her story. Her primary use is of pathos because she filters in those emotional connections at every turn. Which other one does she use?
Ethos.
She also uses ethos. So she uses ethos in using Anne Frank's name. She builds her credibility by stepping on Anne Frank's name. Does she have any logic? Does she have any sense of justice? Okay, and why do you say yes?
I'll say in the sense of justice, I would say, kind of, even though I don't really say it was kind of mean and cruel, but like, she would use the food for the younger ones who are more likely to survive in the war,
Good. So she was portioning things to the best of her abilities. And if we also think about the Holocaust, we know that the Holocaust was a negative situation. So even if we said, oh, well, as a leader, maybe she was mean. Well, she was mean because of this circumstance, and she was controlling it the best that she can. So you do see a little bit of logic in there and justice in the situation. It's another one of those that you have to be really cautious with and you have to be very aware of. So the idea of the rhetorical analysis, if we were to go step by step, the first thing that you really want to focus on is reviewing the piece thoroughly. The pieces that you guys are going to be reviewing are all videos. Some of them have transcriptions and some of them don't. So you can watch the video, and that's what I want you to focus your analysis on. Your analysis is going to be focused on the video itself. It's not focused on the transcription, it's focused on the video. So you're going to review it thoroughly, and you need to determine what the purpose of the piece is. Remember, we talked about all of the purposes of the videos are all to persuade viewers to understand something or to maybe go into an area. Why did it change? So you have to figure out what the purpose of the piece is. The second part of this is making some determinations about the author. So you're analyzing the author, you're analyzing the author's experiences, the author's education, why the author made certain choices. You're doing the same thing for the audience. So you're analyzing what the audience knows, what the audience understands, what is going to be appealing to the audience. And then you're looking at the context. So again, you're looking at the main idea, you're looking at how it's transmitted, and you're looking at the cultural components. Every one of these pieces is going to be from a culture other than your own. So there are three options. You have to choose a culture that is not your own. And out of those three options, you're going to have gaps in your understanding because of that cultural component. So you're looking at the appeals that are used, and you're going to determine what your reasoning is for those appeals being used. You should have some gaps that need to be researched. All of the pieces that you will have the option of, they have authors who are not well known. So you will be able to research the author. They are from other countries, so you'll be able to research a little bit more about the country. Those will help you in filling in some of the gaps. And the whole point of your essay is to determine, is the author effective or ineffective in persuading readers, persuading viewers to understand whatever or to do whatever. So was Irma Sonnenberg-Menkel effective in persuading readers to share their stories? Okay, you would say yes. And you would agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now you're going to prove why you say that's true, or why you think that's true. If you say that she's ineffective, okay, prove why it's true. So this is where, again, it's going to get a little sticky at times because there's not really a wrong answer, but there's a wrong way to give the information. So you are going to determine, is the author effective or ineffective in matching up with his or her purpose. So let's practice. What's the purpose of this advertisement?
To show off his beautiful face.
Okay.
It's obviously, the purpose is to show off the watch.
So think about the purpose pie. What's the language? We want to be very specific. So is it trying to persuade, inform, or entertain?
It's trying to persuade.
Okay, persuade viewers to buy the watch. So who's the author?
Tag here.
Okay, Tag Heuer is the author. So we can make some assumptions about the author. What do you know about Tag Heuer?
They make watches.
Okay,
They have enough money to pay this, their
Brad Pitt.
yeah. That.
Okay, so if they have enough money to pay Brad Pitt to be their spokesperson, then what can you assume?
It's probably not a cheap or cheaply made watch.
No, it's definitely not a cheap watch. Now I know, Jabril, you work at Andrews. Do you guys sell Tag Heuer?
No.
Okay, very expensive brand. I had one student a few years ago, and I used this for a while, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's a Tag Heuer watch." And I was like, "Okay, you know this?" She said, "Yeah, I buy this for my husband, usually once a year." "Oh, how much was it? If you don't mind me asking." $850 is like the baseline price for a Tag Heuer watch. So
Buy a Rolex.
yes, buy something cheaper. So you can make some assumptions, but if there are gaps, you have to research those gaps. So who is the audience for this piece?
Male.
Okay, you would say men. And why do you say men?
Well, okay. It kind of, in my opinion, it goes for both. Men, because they want the watch, but women as kind of like a, hey, you can get your man this watch, maybe he'll look like Brad Pitt.
Okay, so it's going to work for both. Males may be in a search for a watch, so maybe it's appealing because it's a male watch and there's a male model. Women may be appealing, it may be appealing to them because it's Brad Pitt. There we go. And because they may be buying their husband a watch of some kind. Good. We also want to pay attention to the details. So we're seeing a close-up version of his face. Why do you think that matters? Why do you think we're seeing his face?
I mean, he's an attractive individual.
Okay, he's attractive, and more specifically, we're seeing his chiseled jaw, which is kind of known, it's kind of iconic for women. We're seeing his arm, we're seeing a little version of the watch on him, and then we're seeing a piece of the watch coming out in front of us. So these are contextual pieces. Now what about this one? What's the purpose?
Again, the purpose is to sell a watch,
Okay.
even though you don't really notice it at first glance.
So the purpose is to sell a watch, to sell a Dior watch. So who's the author?
Dior.
Okay. So what do you know about Christian Dior?
I don't know anything. So I'd have to research that to find out a little bit more.
So if you don't know, you have to research.
We've kind of
Okay. High-end designer and a very well-known name, right? So for people who are very into fashion or who work in this specific area are definitely going to know the Dior name. It's a popular name. Definitely more popular than Tag Heuer. So you can start to make some assumptions about the author if you know those things. If you don't know those things, then you have to start researching that area. So who is the audience of this piece?
Again, like before, both, but the roles are reversed.
Okay. So women are going to be, this is going to be appealing to women because first the name, her, physically she's a beautiful woman, and maybe they're in search of a watch. Males, her. She's Charlize Theron. So she's gorgeous. She's a beautiful woman. And maybe they're in search of a watch for their wives or their spouse of some kind. So when we look at the context, we want to look at some specifics. You're not actually seeing her body, but you're seeing silhouettes of her body. You're seeing the silhouette of her cleavage. You're seeing her arms and her legs, and her face is kind of the background component, whereas his face is more prevalent, and his arm is there, but his body is missing, or not there for us to see. Why do you think her body is used more?
Because her body is the feature. I mean, it's
Add to the sex appeal of the macho.
yeah.
Okay, so it adds to the sex appeal. It adds to the silhouette of her, the shadows, is definitely going to add to the attraction for men. Men are typically more attracted to the body, and women are typically more attracted to the facial features. So these are things that we want to take into consideration when we're looking at the context. We want to look at things like where the light hits, where the dark hits, where the light hits on her, where the darkness is. So you want to pay attention to those elements. You also want to pay attention to the culture that is being focused on here. So all of these elements are part of the rhetorical analysis. So for homework, you guys are going to read The Right to be Fully American by Yasir Ballou. It is in your common book. I don't know exactly which page it's on, but you can look at your context or your table of contents for that. You are going to read the piece, and I want you to complete the mini analysis of the rhetorical features. So I want you to look at the purpose of the piece. I want you to look at the author. I want you to focus on the audience. And then I want you to look at the context of the piece. There may be areas that you need to research more. So I want you to identify those areas that you need to research by just putting an asterisk there. Just make an asterisk next to it if you need to research it. Now this is another one of those assignments that you're going to do part of it outside of class, and then when you guys come in, you're going to do another component to it. So make sure that you guys have this ready. If you feel more comfortable typing it, it will be in Blackboard, so you guys can go in there and you can type in instead of writing it. But make sure you have a copy of it for Thursday's class.
So officially, the essay is due Thursday.
Yes.
So,
But if you need extra time, just let me know.